Hello, everyone. Hope everyone can hear me. I think we have everyone in the Zoom chat already. Okay, so let's start. Very good. I'm Amy, the brand ambassador of Crystal Wines. Thank you for being so punctual and for attending yet another virtual tasting masterclass of ours. And this round we have Seña and Vinedo Chadwick. So this is the most highly sought after virtual tasting of crystal wines so far. We have a very long waiting list, so lucky you. We have the pleasure of Asia Pacific Regional Director of Seña and Viñedo Chadwick, Julian Fortier, to host this session with us today. He's now in China. Connection not too stable, but hopefully it's good right now. If anything, I'm sure we can sort out along the way. Before passing on to Julian, some house rules first. As usual, we have muted all participants to reduce any background noise. So for any questions that you have, please type them in the group chat, or if you prefer to ask the questions verbally, let me know, or let Crystal Wines know. There's a participant called Crystal Wines. She's my colleague, Cheryl. She's the one helping with the slides. Hello, Cheryl, playing the videos, all that. So any questions you would like to ask verbally, let us know. We will unmute you and have you ask the questions verbally. So without further ado, I now hand over the rest of the presentation to Julian. Julian, the floor is yours.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you very much, Amy. Thank you very much, Cheryl, Crystal Wines, and all of you to join us this afternoon. So, I mean, it's my great pleasure to spend this hour and a half together. So what we will do, I will first start to introduce you about Seña. I think it's going to take roughly around 20 minutes. Then we're going to go through the tasting all together. And then the second part will be about Vinedo Chadwick, an introduction of the winery, the brand, and then the tasting together. Does that sound good? Good. Can you all hear me? Its connection is good so far?
Perfect.
Great. So let's start. I mean, if everyone can see the screen. So first, I would like to share a little bit of history, background of Seña. So actually, the history of Seña is linked to the history of Errázuriz, which is one of the oldest winery in Chile. Started in 1870 by this gentleman called Don Maximiano Errázuriz. And what happened is that Chile has been producing wine for actually a very long time. First, the Spanish conquistador brought the wine to Chile in the 16th century. But we had to wait until almost the 19th century, sorry, in Chile, to have the Chilean to go to Bordeaux to bring back cuttings, especially of Cabernet Sauvignon, and bring back the vines to Chile. So I think it's a bit of moving so well the PowerPoint. Let me get back to the second slide.
No problem.
Or maybe Cheryl, you could help me to move the slide because it's probably a little bit slow on my side.
Yep. Is this slide or the next?
No, the second one on the presentation. Sorry.
This one?
Just before?
Do you get this now, Julian?
Not really. Or maybe you can just handle me the slide and I will pass it and I will get back to you for the video. I think that's going to be easier if we do like this, I guess. If you allow me to. Okay. Well, let's move to the next one, sorry. So that was what I was, wanted to give you a bit of background that Chile has been producing wine for more than 200 years. Then we have to wait. Okay, So here you have the third and the fourth generation of Erasmus family. So on the left side is Eduardo Chadwick. He's the fourth generation of Erasmus family. And on the right side is his father, Don Alfonso Chadwick Erasmus, who is the third generation of Erasmus. So Eduardo Chadwick joined the family winery in 1983, just after being graduated. And the 1980s years in Chile are quite important because that's really when Chile started to export to the world and get the attention of other countries. As I mentioned, Chile has been producing wine for 200 years, more than 200 years, but it was kept as a kind of secret. Only Chilean people really know that there was Chilean wine. Chile is also, as you know, a quite far country. It's quite isolated, and really the country didn't really open to the world until the 1980s. And at that time, that Eduardo Chadwick joined the winery and started to go abroad and export Chilean wine. And he was one of the first, with a few others, family in Chile to really focus on quality and promote top good quality wines. So if we move to the next slide, here you can see what happened is that Robert Mondavi visited Chile in 1991. And Robert Mondavi, as some of you might know, is someone very famous who made...
Sorry, Julian, we didn't get the slide. Cheryl, maybe you can help Julian with the slide. Yeah.
Or maybe you can just pass me the control. I will put mine presentation. It's going to be better, I think.
Pass him the hosting. The hosting.
The controls are with you.
Yes, but it's very slow. That's the problem. Okay. Well, as I was mentioning, so Robert Mondavi went to Chile, and he was really intrigued by the potential of Chilean wine. Robert Mondavi, made California famous in 1966 by creating his own winery, Robert Mondavi Winery. And if you think about it, in the 1960s, there was no real people outside of the US who really believed in the potential of California. And probably what made even Robert Mondavi even more famous is probably when he started the joint venture in 1978 with Philippe de Rothschild, creating Opus One. And this winery, Opus One, really helped Napa to be recognized as a fine wine region in the world. So Robert Mondavi went to Chile. He visited the different winery, different region in Chile. So starting from the north in Aconcagua, going to Maipo, going to the south in Colchagua. And at the end of the trip, he really decided to join force and partner with Eduardo Chadwick, because both people had the same vision, the same dream of showing to the world that Seña can produce, Chile can produce a top wine. And that's how they decided to call this project Seña. So Seña was created in 1995, the first vintage of Seña, and the meaning in Spanish, in Chilean, of Seña means a signal. It's a signal to the world to look at Chile for top fine wine. So it was a very ambitious project since the beginning. It's also the first international joint venture in Chile at that time. There was no international joint venture before Seña. Seña was also the pioneer in developing iconic wine. Another winery was created a year after, called Almaviva. Almaviva was created in 1986, a year after Seña. It's a joint venture between Philippe de Rothschild and Concha y Toro. Another winery called, that you might know, called Cloapalta, which is from L'Apostol family, was created in 1997. So Seña was the first icon winery in Chile in 1995. So to both gentlemen, Mondavi and Chadwick, started the project and they had to look for a vineyard. So they decided to go into Aconcagua, which is a region located slightly in the north of Chile. I mean, if you look at unfortunately we don't have a map of Chile here because it's quite difficult actually to have a very nice map of Chile since it's a long country. It's 4,000 kilometers from north to south, so it's actually the longest country in the world. You have basically the capital, Santiago, capital of Chile, which is roughly located in the middle of the country, and we are located 2 hours driving north in this region called Aconcagua. And you can see on the map that our vineyard is actually very close, we're very close from the Pacific Ocean, only 40 kilometers. So we get a lot of influence, fresh wind from the Pacific Ocean, which is, as you probably know, very, very cold actually, even during summertime. So I think, this year, as we all know, it's a very particular and difficult year to travel. So what we thought it was good is to bring you for 3 to 4 minutes to Chile. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna play a small video to show you our vineyard, and you're gonna have a chance to have Eduardo Chadwick explaining you what Seña is about. So I will let Cheryl play the video, and I will be back with you after this 3 minutes.
From day one, we wanted to create an outstanding wine to showcase Chile's full potential, a wine that will be welcomed in time among the world's first growth. We name it Seña, which means a signal and a commitment to capture the spirit of Chile, its land and our passion for excellence. After 4 years, we found this beautiful property on the hillsides of Ocoa in the Aconcagua Valley, just 40 kilometers from the cold Pacific Ocean. The soil and climate were ideal. It faced northeast towards the Mount Aconcagua, which gives birth to the Aconcagua River, providing a pure source of irrigation to our vineyards. Modeled on a Bordeaux style with distinct Chilean character, Seña's hillside vineyard was planted with Cabernet Sauvignon and Carmenere, along with Malbec, Petit Verdot and Cabernet Franc. The estate's volcanic and gravel soils force the vines to produce small and concentrated fruit berries of a remarkable character. The Andes and the Pacific Ocean provide a unique climate that ensures the ideal combination of warm and sunny days with cool and fresh nights. In 2005, we converted the vineyard to biodynamic farming to produce wines that reflect a unique sense of place. This wonderful journey has evolved beautifully over time as we have come to better understand our terroir. This is just the beginning. Seña, the sign, will keep pointing the way for our world to recognize the true potential of Chile's finest wines from this unique corner of the globe.
and I hope you will have some of you will have the chance to come to Chile if you haven't been before, and it will be our pleasure to receive you there. So as you have seen on, as you have heard on the video and seen, we have 42 hectares in our property. So it's not, it's not a very big property, and we have 6 different grape varieties planted. However, Seña, it's always a Cabernet Sauvignon based blend, which is roughly around 50 to 60%, depending on the vintage. And then the 2 important grape varieties are Carmenère and Malbec. So basically, these 3 grape varieties will probably represent around around 80% of the blend, and then we have a little bit of Merlot, Petit Verdot, and Cabernet Franc to fine-tune the blend. So the idea since the beginning was to do a Bordeaux blend, but with a Chilean touch. So the Carmenère is really the Chilean grape variety. It actually comes from Bordeaux, but almost disappeared in Bordeaux after the phylloxera, and it's a grape variety which reborn in Chile, because the Chilean basically brought it before the phylloxera, and so far, Chile has been phylloxera free and never, and the Carmenère has been there since the 19th century, and it's really a good climate to ripe Carmenère in Chile. So if you can see on the next slide. Move to the next slide, please. Here you can see our 2 important person. So of course, Francisco Betic, who is our winemaker. Francisco is Chilean, but he studied in Bordeaux in Faculté d'Enologie in Bordeaux, started working in Bordeaux, and then went back to Chile, and he has been with us for 15 years. And another important person is Eduardo Gonzalez, who is our biodynamic expert. As you have seen on the video, since 2005, we decided to move to biodynamic in the farming, in the vineyard. That's really a decision from Vinedo Chadwick, our owner, to probably have healthier vines and really to express the terroir where we are. Next, please. So if we, well, here is it's just to hopefully convince you to come to visit us. We have a very nice structure. It's a top hilltop where you can see the full vineyard and enjoy your wine. We actually also can organize. Sometimes we organize some special thing or barbecue actually over there. Well, it's a beautiful natural place, and I hope you have the chance to come. And if we move to the next slide, I would like to explain you the challenge that Seña got through, because as I mentioned to you, the idea from the beginning was to send a sign to the world that Chile can produce top wine. So of course, Mondavi and Eduardo Chadwick both looked for a nice vineyard, as you have seen, and start to plant and produce wine. And both men started to travel around the world. And in early 2000, Eduardo Chadwick faced some doubt and question about people, because he realized that Chilean wines were not really famous abroad, and especially top fine wines. So a lot of people were tasting Seña and thought the quality was good, but they were always doubtful. How come a Chilean wine can produce such a good quality? And a lot of people were asking about rating, especially Parker ratings. Parker was very powerful in year 2000. And Eduardo was really embarrassed, because at that time we didn't have any rating. So if we move to the next slide, please. So Eduardo wondered how he could convince people that the quality of Seña is good quality, is top wine. So he decided to he thought about organizing a blind tasting, because when you taste wine blind, you don't know what is in your glass, and you really focus on your sense and on the quality of the wine. Because before he did some tasting, and when people were looking at the label, oh yes, Chilean wine, yeah, it's good, but maybe it's not as good as another French, Italian, or American wine. So of course he was probably inspired a little bit by the Judgment of Paris. So can we move to the next slide, please? It's when the Judgment of Paris is really something who helped California to be recognized in the fine wine world. If you think about it, in the 70s, French wine were famous. Italian wine was just getting there because Marchese in Cesar della Rocetta launched Sassicaia in the 60s, which and Super Toscan, which is really the wine who helped actually Italy to get recognition abroad, especially in US and then spread around the world. But if we think about California, it's really the Paris Judgment of Paris when American Californian wine were tasting blind against Bordeaux for the red wine and against Burgundy for the white wine, and at the end of the tasting, the Americans wine show up, Californian wine show up on the top position, and it really helped Napa to get recognition. And it's not hazard and coincidence if in 1978, for example, Philippe de Rothschild from Mouton Rothschild went to Napa and created Opus One with Robert Mondavi. So Eduardo had same idea. So he decided to organize a blind tasting in Berlin in 2004. And well, I'm not gonna talk to you too much about it, explain to you too much about it. We have a small video of 4 minutes. And after the video, we could start the tasting together. So Cheryl, if you don't mind, you could play the Berlin tasting video.
On a cold January morning in 2004, 36 of Europe's most highly regarded wine critics, journalists, and buyers met in Berlin to blind taste 16 wines. Eduardo Chadwick, owner and president of the Chilean winery Viñedo, organized the Berlin tasting and seminar with a simple yet powerful objective.
The Berlin tasting came upon my frustration that critics were not really recognizing the quality of our wines because they knew they were Chilean, and Chile was a new country coming into the world stage. So the idea was to have a blind format where they could concentrate on their senses and really evaluate our quality for what it was.
Stephen Spurrier, orchestrator of the Judgment of Paris and one of the world's foremost wine critics and a champion of French wines, hosted the tasting.
When I first heard that from Eduardo that he was going to do a comparative blind tasting with his icon wines against the top wines from Bordeaux in Italy, I thought he was being very brave.
The event started with a technical seminar presenting 2 Chilean terroirs, Aconcagua and Maipo, in the context of the world's most renowned appellations. Then, the group moved on to participate in the comparative blind tasting.
I think blind tastings with a qualified panel, and by qualified panel I mean exceedingly qualified panel, are a very valid, in fact one of the rare ways that an unknown wine of quality can become known.
The wines were selected from Bordeaux and Tuscany's legendary millennial vintage, most of which had been awarded an immaculate score of 100 points by wine critic Robert Parker. 3 of Chile's finest wines were selected: Don Maximiano, the tradition and heritage of Viñedo, Seña, Chile's first icon wine, and Vinedo Chadwick, a tribute to Don Alfonso Chadwick Errázuriz. The wines were carefully served, without revealing the labels. The results were compiled and calculated, and then the unexpected happened.
I was surprised, to say the least. When Eduardo knew that he'd got a wine in the top 5, he relaxed visibly. He turned to me and said, "That's nice." And then the next 2 were French, and then the top 2 were his. He didn't expect a result like that. Nor did I, nor did anyone else.
From Berlin, this unique experience was recreated in the wine capitals of the world, setting out to test the ultimate standards of quality for an icon wine, consistency, and aging potential. Yet, in Sao Paulo, Tokyo, Beijing, London, New York, Hong Kong, and around the world, the Chilean wines consistently earned acclaim, opening minds to Chile as an origin for truly world-class wines, one glass at a time.
The Berlin tasting, right like the Paris tasting, can be talked about and talked about and talked about. But if you have the consistency like that, that is a remarkable result. And it proves Eduardo's point that his wines are equal to the best wines in the world.
Well, it has been a great honor to participate in all these tastings around the world and to have been able to prove that our wines have been consistently selected amongst the best wines of the world.
That, I think, is the major result, that Chilean wines were not viewed as great potential wines before. After the Berlin tasting, they were.
Well, if we the Berlin tasting really helped. I mean, as you see in the video, if you can move to the next slide, Cheryl, please. Have you seen on the video, the idea of Eduardo Chadwick was probably to get one wine on the top 5, but he didn't expect actually 2 of his wine, Chadwick and Seña, to be on the first place, and a lot of, I mean, none of the critics were expecting that, so it was really a big surprise for everyone. And as you understood, the idea of Eduardo was not to say that this wine has the best wine. I mean, but Seña or Vinedo Chadwick are better than any other wines. It was just to prove that this wine could be tasted side by side with the top wine of the world. So, if you can move to the next slide, Cheryl, please. It's Eduardo decided to spend 10 years of his life to organize 22 tastings around the world, because what happened is that after the Berlin tasting, he went to Brazil, and Brazilians said, well, this tasting happened in Germany. Here is Brazil. We probably have different taste and different. We have different palettes. So why don't you do a tasting here? So then Eduardo realized he had to travel around the world and do this tasting in a lot of places to prove that Chile and Seña, Viñedo Chadwick are wines of great quality. And if we move to the next slide, Cheryl, please, we'll see the results were, of course, different in different countries, and that was also the point. But Seña was always well placed and always had one wine in the top 5. So, well, today we're not going to do a blind tasting. We're just going to go through a small vertical tasting of Seña. And if you can move to the next slide, Cheryl, please, so that we can see the different scores that we have today. Well, we're very happy to show you the scores, because as you understood, we had no scores before 2004. So actually, if you see on the screen, all the scores from 2005 onwards they have been tested recently, because in the past we didn't have this rating. But luckily today, all our wines are tasted when they are released, or even before the release. So today we will taste together. If I'm not wrong, we have three wines from Seña, 3 vintage. What we're going to do, we're going to start with the slightly older one, 2013. Then we will taste 2017, and then the next one will be 2018. And actually 2018 is something very special, because the wine is not even released yet. So you are the first people in Singapore to taste this wine. This one will be released next month, and is not going to be available in Singapore, I guess, before maybe November. So wanted to have something very special for you. So, well, you can probably, if you don't have your wine nearby, you can go and take it. Let's start with Seña 2013. So, if as I mentioned, Seña 2000. Seña. We like to say it's a Chilean Bordeaux blend. So, as I mentioned, Cabernet Sauvignon is always the backbone of the wine. So, it's always between 50 and 60%. So, in 2013, it was 58% of Cabernet Sauvignon. Then the second grape variety, which always play an important role, is Carmenère. So we had 15% of Carmenère in 2013, and then we had some Malbec, Merlot, and Petit Verdot. So at Seña, in terms of wine making, we do a really traditional wine making as it can happen in Bordeaux. We pick up grapes, double sorting, fermentation, and then we do the aging. Usually it's always 22 months, and we use in 2013 we only use new. We use 70% of new French oak, and the rest is basically second used barrel. We only use French oak, and we work with different copper from Burgundy over for the barrels. So in Chile, probably some of you have been in Chile. I'm not sure, but if some of you have been to Chile, you probably know that Chile it's a dry country, and for wine to produce wine, it's actually great, but we need some water. So in our vineyards, for example, we need to irrigate because we don't have enough water. It's impossible to do dry farming where we are. So and when it rains in Chile, most of the rains are concentrated in winter, which at the end don't really affect too much the grape. But sometimes we have, of course, some rain times to times in spring, summer, or even at the harvest. So really what will make the difference in Chile, it's really the temperature. So in Chile, we like to difference warmer vintage from cooler vintage. So 2013 was a cool vintage in Chile. And it's a great, actually it's probably a great vintage for us because we had a very cool season, and we like to have actually, if we have to choose between warmer season and cooler season, we will probably choose cooler season because we don't have too much difficulties to ripe to grape in Chile, not as it could be in France or in Italy. But sometimes we have too much sun. So, weather is something we cannot control. But 13, we were very happy with a cool season. So perhaps we can start to taste together. And I think if you have any question about Seña or comments about the wine, we can don't hesitate to ask. So I think on the, it's a wine which has 7 years, so it still have a little bit, I think, of slightly some notes from the oak, probably still a bit of little bit of coffee or notes. But I found very nice. A bit of black currants and some red and dark fruits, some cherries, plum, and those.
Very concentrated. I think by now I could feel like the tannins has smoothened. There's some capsicum notes which I love because it is very reflective of the the majority predominant Cabernet Sauvignon. Not too much. Very concentrated fruits.
Yes, you're totally right. It's and I think it's you know, it's 2013. Seña, it's a wine made to age. As you realized, the idea is, you know, all the vintage we are tasting today are probably still young, but 13 is definitely, I think, the most the wine which will be the more open, but still, as you mentioned, there is still a very nice concentration. The tannins are very smooth. I mean, they are here, I think, but I think they are quite. The tannic structure, I think, it's still very well integrated.
Yeah, it's very well integrated. Yeah.
And I think, I mean, it really depends also on when did you open the bottle, but it's a wine which, you know, Seña usually on the young vintage that we are tasting today, it's good to open it probably an hour or two before to let it breathe. However, it's a wine I think can be already enjoyed for 2013.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm
yeah, very good. Shall we taste the 2017 now?
Yes, we can for sure.
So I think before everyone start tasting their 2017, let's take a group photo. Everyone, can you fill your glass with your new wine, the 2017 vintage? And then, yeah, before all of us get all tipsy, maybe you should start taking a group photo first. Turn on your videos, everyone. Those who have video on, okay. Hopefully everyone's ready. So on the count of 3, let's raise our glass and take a nice photo and then, you know, post it on Facebook, social media. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Cheers. Everyone got a good photo. Hopefully we got a good photo, yeah. Okay, so let's taste the wine.
Thank you, Amy. It's a great idea.
Yeah, trying to promote.
To take a picture. Thank you very much.
I'll send it to you.
Please. 17, Seña 17. Well, you know, we choose 17 because compared to 2013, 17 was a warmer vintage at Seña. So we had, you know, warmer temperature than usual. And actually what happened is that we had to harvest almost 3 weeks in advance. Why? Because the grape were mature and we didn't want to wait longer, because then we will have a grape with higher sugar, which means also higher alcohol. And that's not really the style of Seña. As you have seen, the idea of Seña being not too far from the Pacific Ocean, it's to have very elegant Bordeaux blend with nice, of course, you know, mature fruit, but still nice tension and acidity. So I think for me, I mean, I mean, you let me know, Amy, if you agree or not. But on the nose, we can find, I think, more darker fruits than 13. Probably more mature, also a little bit some sweet note, I think, on the nose. Of probably a little bit of. I got a little bit of cigar.
Yeah. Also
a touch of cigar box. Maybe some tea leaves.
Okay, I cheated a little bit. I actually opened this. I tasted it when we were having the meeting at 1 o'clock. I found that it was on the palate. It was not fully integrated. And then now I'm drinking this. It's beautiful. So I think this needs to decant for a while for the flavors to really come together. Now it's like after 2 hours, 2 to 2.5 hours, everything's really coming together. And even on the nose, yeah, it's more flamboyant as compared to when I tasted it when it was first opened.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, these are definitely you know, young vintage, but I think it's also the beauty of New World Wine and Seña as well. It's that you know, 17 is just the one we have released a year ago, and so it's very still very young. And at Seña we started producing wine, as you seen, since 1995. So we have 25 years of history. So we know our wines can age 25 years. They can probably age even longer. So we have an aging potential. Nevertheless, I think you know, a young vintage like 17, as you mentioned, when you just open it, it can appear you know, maybe not very enjoyable first, but after a little bit of decanting, it gets together, and I think you know, 17, it's you know, it's a great vintage for us, because even though it was a warmer vintage, so we have some so, I mean, it's a vintage who definitely had some concentration, some power,
but very nice acidity. That's what balances it.
But you mentioned, I mean, you know, on a month you have plenty of ripe fruits, and you feel a power, but then you have a very nice acidity, very nice tension, and that's the reason why we harvested on purpose almost 3 weeks before than if we compare to 2016, because Francisco, our winemaker, really wanted to you know, to have this tension, this acidity, which also it's very important for the sorry, for the wine to age, but also gives probably more drinkability to the wine at a younger stage.
Okay, very good.
In terms of assemblage of blend, it's really similar. You know, Cabernet Sauvignon dominated. Then we have Malbec and Cabernet are the same percentage, 50%. And probably what we have been changing a little bit, adjusting, it's on the aging. As you can see, we always age for 22 months, but we have started to use a little bit of foudre. These are big oak vats of 1,500 liter. And we started to age a little bit the wine on it to basically give a little bit more access to the fruit. So and that's something you can realize in 17, and you will realize after the next one in 2018, which is even not released, but nevertheless the use of foudre, which are big oak vats, enable to give more access to the fruit, especially when the wine is young. You know, if you taste some wine which has been oak aged for 22 months with only new French oak, you will probably only feel the oak. You know, you're not going to feel much of the fruit. And our idea is to have our wine probably enjoyable when, you know, when we are young, but also, of course, having a good aging potential.
Yep, agree.
So,
shall we move on to the next vintage?
Sure, let's move to 2018. Yeah. So 2018, as I mentioned, not released yet. So it's, you know, it's not a wine available in the market. It's really for you to kind of taste what we call in Bordeaux the imprimeur, or before a wine which is just has been bottled actually last February. So it's very young. So 2018, the season of 2018 was actually perfect. What I mean by perfect, it was not too warm, not too cold. So it's a wine with very nice harmony. When we picked the grape in March 2018, we already know it's going to be a great vintage, because we didn't have to make too much intervention into the vineyard. So what's you know, what's really impressive, I think, in 2018 is the the smell actually. You have a very nice floral notes, a lot of flowers, probably a little bit of blueberries and raspberry on the nose, and this comes mainly from the Malbec. Actually, in vintage 2018, of course, it's always 50. We have a base of Cabernet Sauvignon, but we have around 18% of Malbec, and Malbec that we have in our vineyard is very floral, very floral. So it's really what you can smell on the nose. And on the palate, you have a lot of very fresh red fruits, very crunchy, and of course you have definitely a higher acidity than 17 or 13 for two reasons. One is, of course, because the wine is younger, but also it was we wanted also to have, the acidity is also bringing some freshness to the wine. So it's a vintage which is very fresh. Nevertheless, you can feel the tannins. They are here, well integrated, but they are present. It's a wine with some good muscle, good structure, good acidity, good fruit. I mean, it's very well balanced. And of course, it's a baby, but we can see it's a cute baby with a very long potential to age. So for us at Seña, we really wanted to share with you this vintage, because even it's the younger one, the latest one that we have, it's probably for us one of the best, or the very best actually. So we because the season 2018, it's a season we haven't had in Chile for almost 15-20 years. I mean, we cannot really recall one season which was that perfect in terms of temperature, not too warm, not too cold at Seña. So we believe actually that's our best vintage. So well, hope you like it.
Yeah, it's 100 points.
Yes, also it's it's second time we got 100 points from James Suckling. We got in 2015 and this year in 2018. Maybe we were surprised for 15. I mean, we knew the wine was good, but maybe we were a little bit surprised. But for 2018, honestly, we were not very surprised because we knew it's the best. It's a top quality, and we are waiting also for Wine Advocate scores, which we believe also might be high and might be probably one of the highest in Chile also. So anyway, if you talk about Chile, generally speaking, 2018 is a better vintage, generally speaking, than 17 or 16 or even 19, which is going to be a little bit warmer vintage.
Okay, point to note. Okay, do we have any questions from participants? Maybe they need time to digest the questions.
Yeah, and you can keep the tasting, and I will start probably to introduce Vinedo Chadwick, and then we will go through the tasting because I think everyone times is counted, so I don't want to bother you for the whole afternoon as well. So let's probably move to
so Julian, we have one question now. From Dennis, how do you adjust in your winemaking to balance out the wine in the differences in the various weathers in various vintages?
It's a very good question. Well, as I mentioned, for example, 17, which was a warmer vintage. So in a warmer vintage, what we will do, usually we will probably harvest a little bit earlier. Okay. Why? Well, to make sure we have a good acidity, good tension, not too much sugar, not too much alcohol. On the cooler vintage, we might do, for example, some green harvest in a vineyard. So basically cut the leaves and make sure there is more sun exposure into for the grape. So these are the kind of change we will do. Also in terms of the blend, in a warmer vintage, we will usually have a little bit more Carmenere, because Carmenere, it's a grape variety which needs some sun, and it's very warmer vintage, probably to ripe better, nicer. On a cooler vintage, we might have a little bit more Malbec, because Malbec is usually ripe earlier. So that's how we will adjust a little bit on depending on if a vintage was warmer or cooler.
Okay, so this question from Dennis again. So what is the uniqueness of Seña that we're trying to bring out every year?
It's a very it's a very difficult very difficult and vague question to answer. I think as I mentioned at the beginning, Seña, the idea of Seña was to open eyes to people, to show that Chile can produce a fine wine. So that's the reason why we decided also to do a Bordeaux blend, because Bordeaux is probably the region who got recognized since 1855 because of a ranking made for Napoleon for the Paris exhibition, and since that time, Bordeaux had the fame. And if you think, for example, of Italy only got recognition thanks to the Super Toscan, whereas Italy has been producing wine also for probably longer time than France. US got the recognition through the Paris Gentleman of Paris. So since the beginning, we wanted to have a Bordeaux blend, which is a wine can be comparable with other Bordeaux blend within the world. I think the uniqueness of Seña in terms of Bordeaux blend is, as we mentioned, is a Chilean Bordeaux blend. So in Bordeaux, you will rarely have the Carmenere. The Carmenere really gives a little bit of spices into the blend, and I think since 2012 we started to use also the Malbec. So we have, in all the vintage you tasted, you also have a little bit of Malbec, and the Malbec gives a little bit also floral notes, blue notes into the blend. And I think today I cannot think of an equivalent blend from Chile or other countries in the world which has this personality where you have probably an elegant, it's very elegant, but nevertheless with very ripe fruit. So I think Seña has really this charm. It's probably very feminine Bordeaux blend.
Yeah, I agree.
That was what I would describe it. Elegant, feminine, but nevertheless there is some power and aging potential.
Yeah, I agree on that. It's like a Bordeaux, but with a little bit more fruit expression.
Yeah.
A little bit more concentration, and it's not as big as a US cult wine.
Exactly.
Honestly,
exactly.
I love Chilean wine. Yeah.
I think it's a big compromise, as you mentioned, between Bordeaux and Napa. I think Chile is in between, or at least Seña.
Okay, so there's another question from Steph. How would you be able to explain what you mean by stabilization occurring naturally?
What? Sorry, I didn't. What do you,
Stabilization
okay.
occurring naturally.
Did I mention about that, or it's on?
Okay, never mind, Steph. Maybe you could, maybe Steph, you could type it out, or do you want to unmute yourself so that you could ask the question verbally? Maybe we could take this at the end of the session. I think let's proceed with our presentation for Vinedo Chadwick. Cheryl, can you pull out the presentation slide? Okay.
Okay. Okay, good.
And you got it?
Oh, yes, I got it. Good. Great. So, well, let me go quickly through the history of Vinedo Chadwick. So, if we move to the next slide, we'd like to introduce you Vinedo Chadwick. Actually, the name Chadwick came from England, as you can hear. And it's not a Spanish name. I mean, most of Chileans have been immigrants from Spain, but some of them went to immigrate from the UK. And actually, Thomas Chadwick was someone who from Oxford who went to Chile in 1820. Cheryl, please. I cannot see the slide of Thomas Chadwick.
You got
Next.
it, Julian?
Not yet, but maybe you got it before me.
Yeah, you have it.
Good.
No worries.
And no problem. That's my connection. Basically, this gentleman immigrated from Chile to from UK to Chile, not for wine but for gold. It was a gold rush. He went to Chile looking for gold. Unfortunately, he didn't find any gold, but he found a wife, got married, settled in Chile, and it's how the Chadwick family settled in Chile. Next slide, please. So actually, the great son of Thomas Chadwick, Alejandro Chadwick, married with the niece of Don Maximiano Errázuriz, and that's how Errázuriz family name changed to Chadwick. So together they had a son called Alfonso Chadwick Errázuriz, and he's the father of Eduardo Chadwick. So if we move to the next slide, please, we can see that Alfonso Chadwick Errázuriz was, of course, the owner of Errázuriz family, but he has also another passion, which was polo. He was a polo player. He was the captain of the Chilean team of polo. He traveled around the world to play polo. He just missed one extra cup, to be in a Guinness record of the best player ever of polo. So he was a very, he was a professional polo player. When the Duke of Edinburgh went to Chile in 1968, it went to Alfonso's home and played together polo. So if we move to the next slide, please. Cheryl, why I'm talking that much about polo? It's basically because Alfonso Chadwick, owner of Errázuriz and polo player, bought a property in Puente Alto, in Maipo Valley, where he was living with his family. So as you can see on the picture, the smallest child is actually Eduardo Chadwick, who was born in this house. And when he was young, if you can see on the right picture, he was playing in a garden, and actually you can see in the back there is a polo field where his father was practicing every day. Eduardo grew up, joined the family winery, started a project with Robert Mondavi, Seña, and he was really, Eduardo Chadwick was not really in polo, but really into wine. So what happened, we can see the next slide, please. In 1992, Eduardo Chadwick decided, asked his father if he could convert his beloved polo field into a vineyard. Why? Because his father knew, Eduardo knew that this place is probably the best place and the most famous place in Chile to produce top fine Cabernet Sauvignon. So he asked his father if he could convert his polo fields. And as you can imagine, it was a difficult discussion at home. Eduardo's father was, loved polo very much. So first he was not, he didn't really agree. Then he retired from polo, so he agreed and let Eduardo plant in 1992. In 1993, unfortunately, Eduardo's father passed. So that's why when Eduardo launched the wine in 1999, and next slide, please, he decided to call this wine Vinedo Chadwick as a tribute to his father. So if we go on the next slide, please, you will see a little bit about the vineyard over there. So we have a very, we are here, location, we are in a completely different location than Seña. So it's important to know that. The only common point is the ownership, but we are in two different regions. Next one, please. where we can see the map. We can see the map where is Vinedo Chadwick located. Vinedo Chadwick, as I mentioned, is located in a region called Maipo. Maipo, it's slightly in the south of Santiago, and it's a big region where there is 10,000 hectares. But within Maipo, there is a sub-region called Alto Maipo, which is basically like Medoc within Medoc. And inside there is another smaller appellation called Puente Alto, which is only 100 hectares. And Chadwick is located within Puente Alto, where we have 15 hectares. Next slide, please, Cheryl. So where we can see that actually Puente Alto, it's within the city of Santiago. So unfortunately, what you can see on the picture on the map, what is gray is the city of Santiago, but we are located in the south. I mean, the city of Santiago has been expanded, and we are very close from the Andes. So we got actually a lot of cool wind coming from the Andes to refresh our vineyard. Next slide. In terms of weather over there, we like to say that Vinedo Chadwick, it's a Mediterranean climate. However, it's very different from Mediterranean on the because we have a big temperature difference between day and night. That's something which you won't have, in Mediterranean region. So, for example, in Chile during the day can go to 30 degrees, but in the evening, on the summertime, it can go down to 10 degrees. So it's very good actually for the grape. Very good because we can ripe the grape, but nevertheless we can still have a very good acidity. So let's move to the next slide, Cheryl, please. And then, in terms of soil, we have mostly gravel soil, so it's a very poor soil where the grapes really need to go deeper to get some water. If we move to the next slide, we'll go quickly also through recognition of Vinedo Chadwick, because as you realize, Vinedo Chadwick got recognized since the second vintage. I mean, it was first vintage was 1999, and the vintage 2000 is really the one. The one who won the burning tasting and get the attention of the critics. The next slide, please. Sorry. So if we see on the 2000 vintage has been selected by Decanter as a wine legend. So to give you an idea, wine legend by Decanter, I think is it's wine like Lafite 82, Mouton 45. I mean, only the best wine in the best vintage got this acclaim. Next one, please. Yeah, that's here on the milestones. So also something very specific from Vinedo Chadwick. That's the first wine from Chile who got 100 points. So before this one, no wine in Chile got this recognition, this 100 points. And Vinedo Chadwick was the first one who got it in 2000 with vintage 2014. So as you can see, it's not long ago. I mean, it's only 4 years ago that the critics really started to recognize Chile as a top fine wine place to produce wine. So I think we can probably start to the tasting. Can you just move to the next slide, please, Sarah? Just checking if there is anything more. Well, it's about the scores, but I think you could have a look after later. Vinedo Chadwick is basically the highest rated wine from Chile. If we look at James Suckling or Robert Parker. So today we have selected two vintages, 2016 and 2018. 2016, as I briefly mentioned, even if we have roughly 200 kilometers difference between Seña and Vinedo Chadwick, soils are completely different. The influence from Vinedo Chadwick comes from the Andes, the influence from Seña comes from the Pacific Ocean. But in terms of weather, it's a bit similar, I would say. So season 2016 was a cool season at Vinedo Chadwick. And Vinedo Chadwick, it's we like to say it's Cabernet Sauvignon. Actually, we have 14 hectares of planted of Cabernet Sauvignon, and we have 1 hectare planted of Petit Verdot. So the Petit Verdot is mostly used for the tannins, for the color, but you know it's a Cabernet Sauvignon. So you know you definitely have some touch from the Cabernet Sauvignon on the nose, which will be, for example, in you know some black currant. I think the black currant from Vinedo Chadwick is very the signature of the wine. You have really pure black currant. Of course, you could have a little bit of touch of mint sometimes, or can come from the oak or from the Cabernet Sauvignon.
Surprisingly, very smooth for 2016.
Exactly, it's very well. I think Vinedo Chadwick is a wine very surprising, and you know, and that's the reason why it's also, I think, performed very well on a blind tasting, because it's 100%. I mean, 97% Cabernet Sauvignon, but it's very smooth, as you mentioned, very rounded.
Yeah.
Of course, you have power, but it's very well controlled power, and especially on the vintage of 2016. It's a fantastic vintage because it's a cooler vintage. So from that part, you know, we definitely prefer to have, as I mentioned before, cooler vintage, because on a warmer vintage in Chile, it can be difficult to control the you know, the sugar level, the alcohol level, and then it can be overpowerful, and that's not the style we like to have. I mean, it's more a question of style probably, but the weather, you know, sometimes I mentioned before, we do some adjustment, but we cannot control it you know, entirely. So but yeah, I think 16 is very nice. It's fresh. I think it is nice freshness. It's of course very young. It's a wine, probably Vinedo Chadwick has probably even longer aging potential than Seña, and due to the fact that's a Cabernet, you know, 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. But nevertheless, it's a wine, you know, if you open it, decant it, I would suggest probably longer decanting time than Seña. It's a wine that can still be enjoyable when it's young. If you like young, I mean, you know, a little bit powerful, but as I mentioned, is very more feminine also if you compare to Napa Cab, for example.
Yeah, so it's a cooler region, and I always think that, you know, if it's cooler region, the tannins are harsher. But this one is actually very.
It's
very mature.
what
Fine.
I mean, yeah, no, I mean, you know, it's cool, but we can still ripe the grape. You know, that's very important to mention. It's in where we have, I mean, in Chile, in Maipo and Puente Alto, where we are for Vinedo Chadwick, there is no problem to ripe the grape, and the tannins also. It's I mean, well, it's also the job, and I think a winemaker, Francisco Betic, is doing a great job to have very well integrated tannins. It's not very easy, especially when you know, on a young vintage.
Yeah, so Albert is saying, I'm just jumping the questions now immediately. Chadwick 2016 tastes fruitier compared to the Seña. What do you think, Julian?
Fruitier, probably. I think. I mean, it's difficult. And there is definitely fruits. That's for sure. I think. Well, it's difficult to compare with Seña, because I mean, we don't like to compare because these are two different regions and a blend. You know, Seña, it's a blend. So for sure, in Seña you will get spices from the Cabernet. You will get you know, floral notes from the Malbec.
Maybe it's the Petit Verdot, because Seña doesn't have Petit Verdot.
No, not really. I mean, the Petit Verdot is really mostly for the tannins and the color. I think Vinedo Chadwick also, it's young. I mean, it's 2016, and it's probably, you know, you only have one expression. The Cabernet Sauvignon. It's basically the expression of the Cabernet Sauvignon. So it can feel less, maybe less complex, maybe, or less expressive, let's put it that way, because you only have one grape variety, so you have only one.
More focused, right? It's more
focus.
precise.
Yes, that's what I mean. I mean, for Vinedo Chadwick, it's actually a wine which is, you know, very linear, very classic. It's not like Seña, which probably is more flamboyant. You know, there's a little bit of spices, a little bit of it's and especially when it's young. You know, it's really the difference. It's really the fact that I wouldn't really suggest to drink Vinedo Chadwick 2016 now. For me, Vinedo Chadwick, it's a wine who probably need at least 8-9 years to really, you know, express itself, because it might be now I think it's still probably still close for me. You know, it doesn't have offered all its flavor, so that's why it can be very direct, very fruity, and not maybe as complex as you think as Seña, for example, as a younger stage. I think Seña is the wine who offer probably more at a younger stage. I don't know if it makes sense.
It does make sense to me. And if it develops at a later stage, I'm sure, you know, more of the other secondary, tertiary notes will develop and enhance Vinedo Chadwick. Shall we move on to 2018?
Sure. No problem. So here as well, I mean, we wanted to to share with you a wine which is not released yet, and to share this great vintage 2018, because as I mentioned, for Seña, 2018 is really a very good vintage for us, because the weather was really balanced, so not too warm, not too cold. Here you will probably think you will probably even get more fruit. We're talking about fruit of 16. You know, the 18, it's definitely even more fruitier because it's young. You know, it's definitely just a bottle 6 months ago. But nevertheless, I think you have a very nice, you know, the nose is very expressive for such a young wine. Sorry.
It really needs to breathe. I played cheat because I said I opened my wines a little bit earlier. Oh, now it's opening up so beautifully, even for the 2018.
Yeah, it's definitely a wine. You know, the 18 you can you know, keep it and probably taste it before dinner or even after dinner. Because
oh, it's very good. Yeah, you're right. It's prettier.
I mean, on the nose you have some little bit of petal roses, you know, the black currant as I mentioned, but on the mouth is very, you know, you have very nice, you know, a lot of fruits, very juicy, very juicy.
Oh, very juicy.
The tannins are actually very, very fine. I mean, you can feel they are here, but they are already well integrated. And the length, you know, it's very long, very long finish. It's you know, it's this kind of vintage that you can realize that it's a great vintage, because when a wine is young like this, I mean, most of you know, all of you have been tasting I'm sure many wines, so you have experience, and you know it's a great wine. You know, it's not probably the best time to taste it, but it's always good to taste the wine young, because you can feel also the potential. And here you know 2018 it's a great vintage, probably to buy, but to keep and to open probably in, you know, 5-6 years, one bottle, to see how it evolved. But unfortunately, you know, we don't have, I mean, we have very little back vintages in our. winery. So we really wanted to show you vintage and wine you can find in the market, because sometimes we brought very old vintage and people love it, but it's impossible to find them. So it's also to have some wine that you can find. On our side, we are also keeping more and more wine in our in our vineyards now, in our winery, to make sure to have more for the future. Because unfortunately, in the past, like a lot of New World winery, we didn't keep much, and actually these wines have a big, huge aging potential. So hope you have the chance to taste again this vintage within 5-10 years and see how we evolved. But it's if you have to remind something about the different vintage we tasted today. So 13 and 16 are cooler vintage, so probably vintage with more acidity. 17 are probably a little bit warmer vintage, and 18 is probably the balance between both.
So what do you suggest about the aging period? Because we do have a question just now that trying to, so what is your recommendation for aging potential for Seña 2013, 17, 18, as well as these two wines that we just tasted?
I think Seña 13, it's a wine you can already start to enjoy. Of course, you open it, you probably want to decant an hour, I think, but it's a wine you can already start enjoying. Seña can be aged for 20 years, it's no problem. We started in 95. Our 95, unfortunately, is past now, but 96 is wonderful now. 97 as well. So it's a wine who can, 20, 23 years, no problem. But to have tasted almost all vintage of Seña, I think Seña start to really be open after 6-7 years. So 13, for example, now it's a good time. For Vinedo Chadwick, I would probably recommend more to wait maybe 8-9 years at least. So I would say today to drink maybe Vinedo Chadwick 2010, 11, start to open up. So that's what I would I would mention. So if you can find some Seña 2014, 13 or before, I think you can already enjoy them. But it's always a difficult question to answer, because some people also like to drink the wine earlier, younger. If we look at all the Napa or cult wine in the market, they are all 16, 15, and I think they also have some charms, their charm. So for me today, with my personal palate, I would drink 13 and 17. I could drink it also for sure, with probably two hours decanting.
Yeah, it depends on preference, because for me, I love fruit expression. So I like, I don't like to age my wines too long when all the tertiary notes start to develop. So it's about, I guess it's about really the preference, especially for such a good wine like that. And I'm so enjoying it after breathing for just 2 hours. Yeah. But definitely, this will definitely reward next few years. I think the complexity would definitely be much more. Okay.
Amy, just for the stabilization, I got the question before. So what we mean in our in the winemaking is that the stabilization occur naturally. It means we don't some people, some winery do some filtration, or it can be centrifugation, etc., to stabilize the wine. So we don't do. We just wait for the wine to stabilize basically by itself. So there is some process. It's very technical question of winemaking. But some winery basically use some way of like centrifugation to speed up the process. But here, as you understand, our ways, I mean, our goal is to make top fine wines, and you know, we age the wine for 22 months. So there is no way, I mean, there's no need to speed up the stabilization of the wine. You know, we can wait for basically the release and everything to go down.
Okay, so basically, if you speed it up, does it compromise on quality a bit?
No. What I'm saying is that we don't do that. That's why
Okay.
it appears naturally. I mean,
Yeah.
That's why we mentioned about natural stabilization, because some, you know, if you do probably a wine you want to be more ready to drink, you might not do the stabilization naturally. You might speed up by centrifugation, as I mentioned, filtering, etc., etc. That's not what we are doing. We just, you know, rack it, put it in a barrel, and the stabilization occur in a barrel, basically.
So is there any fining? I mean, just talking about this fining and filtration. No, okay, so that's no fining, no filtration. Okay, I got it. Okay, so some questions came along the way. There's a question on terroir. How do you compare your terroir, which I believe it's referring to Seña, Aconcagua, comparing Aconcagua with Cochabamba? And then, since we are at Vinedo Chadwick, maybe you can talk about the comparison among all these three: Maipo, Aconcagua.
It's a very vague and difficult question, because there is you know, you can find similar soil in Colchagua, for example, as Aconcagua, which means we have some clay loam, mostly at Seña. We also have some volcanic soil, but probably a soil that we're not going to find much in Colchagua. I mean, volcanic, you don't going to have too much, and we also have soil from the Andes called andesite. Okay, so in Colchagua you can actually find similar soil, but I think the most difference between Colchagua and Aconcagua is really about the weather, about the temperature. Colchagua is definitely warmer. Okay, so it's a wine you will probably have. It's going to be easier also, and even to ripe and plant Carmenère, for example, and you will have, you will have warmer wine, probably a little bit more muscular, more full-bodied, I think. That's probably the difference between Colchagua and Aconcagua. In Aconcagua, you know, where we are, if you go just 5-10 kilometers on the west, it's impossible to ripe red grape varieties. You will be only ripening Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. So Aconcagua is definitely cooler. In terms of soil at Maipo is mostly gravel soil. It's mostly a lot of gravel soil. It's really Cabernet Sauvignon. You know, that's the best place to grow Cabernet Sauvignon. We tried in the past a little bit of Carmenère. It didn't perform that well. Also, it was not a good place to ripe it well, and the soil also were not really nice for Carmenère from our experience at Vinedo Chadwick. So yeah, I mean, Colchagua is a big region too, so you know, you can find different soil, the same as Aconcagua. So probably soil-wise, you can find some similarity, but I think the climate is a big difference between both Aconcagua and Colchagua.
And Seña is at like the best terroir in Aconcagua.
Yes, it's you know, we hide the slide about the geology of the soil. We have 5 different kind of soil actually. So we have soil from a colluvial origin, we have soil from alluvial origin, we have some clay loam, and we have some volcanic soil, and we have some andesite soil. So everything in 42 hectares. So actually, that's the reason why we choose this place. It's because it's not that big, but we have a diversity of soil. And also we are definitely the coolest place where we are still able to ripe Bordeaux grape varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Carmenère. So if you go, as I mentioned, a little bit on the western side, we actually have a small mountain range. I think you saw in a video, which protects us from the cold wind from the Pacific Ocean. So yeah, it's it took us some time then to find this this vineyard. From Robert Mondavi and Eduardo Chadwick together, they spent 3 years before finding this place. So it has been very well thought.
Okay, so David, we hope we answered your question. Another question that we got, very technical. Since the cold air coming from the Andes Mountain makes the diurnal range high, can you define Chadwick being high in acidity?
Because it comes from higher altitude. That's what.
Yeah, higher altitude. I think from the mountain.
It's you know the. If we look at temperature actually at Vinedo Chadwick, it will be actually on the same season. It will be a little bit warmer at Vinedo Chadwick than at Seña. Okay. But nevertheless, the fact that we have on a plateau of 650 meters, definitely we get the cool wind from the Andes, and it helps for the acidity. But the acidity, yes, comes from from the climate, but it also comes from the time on the winemaking and when we pick the grapes. It's very important. We always try to harvest slightly earlier maybe than our neighbors. Actually, at Vinedo Chadwick, we are neighbors with Almaviva, for example, and we usually harvest a little bit earlier than Almaviva, for example. But the result might be that we have probably a slightly higher acidity, a slightly higher tension, but that's the style we want to have. Maybe at Almaviva, which is a Mouton Rothschild joint venture, they're probably looking for also more Mouton style, which is probably a little bit more power. So it's a question of style at the end also.
Okay. So there's a question from Dennis. He asked if you guys aged the wine in the past couple of decades, and how does it evolve along the years? So I think we answered that question already.
Yeah, we do. I mean, as I mentioned, Chadwick, we started in 1999. So for Chadwick, 1999 is still beautiful, vintage 2000 as well. So we're still waiting for the aging potential of Chadwick. And for Seña, we started in 95. 95, unfortunately, is past today, but 96, I had it last year. It was fantastic. So, and to be honest with you, in the 90s, we didn't have, and we were not aging 22 months. We were aging like 16 months, 18 months maximum. So I believe the younger vintage will actually be able to age much longer.
Any more questions? I think we have answered all of the questions. Julian, I'm afraid I'm also losing you. It's not very stable over there. Yeah, but I'm glad. I think the session is coming to an end. We can close now. Do you have any last words before we end the session?
Well, I mean, I want to thank you, Crystal Wines. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Melissa, and all the team, Cheryl, to organize this session. And thank you, all of you, for taking time on this Saturday afternoon to learn more, or to refresh your mind about Chile. And I really hope you enjoy our wine. And I hope we have the occasion to meet in Singapore, hopefully next year.
Yeah, we would love to visit Seña.
And you're all welcome to come to Chile if you. I know it's difficult to travel, but I believe in the future it will be possible again. So you are all invited to come to visit us. Yep.
Thank you, Julian, for being with us today. Cheryl,
Pleasure.
Can you pull out the last slide? Yes, so everyone, if you enjoyed the session and we've taken a nice group photo together, so share it on social media, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Telegram, and you can receive more information on our upcoming virtual masterclasses. We organize virtual masterclasses very regularly, about twice a month. If you would love to purchase these wines, visit our website at www.crystalwines.com. The offers will be up until 2 weeks, for 2 weeks, and it's while stock lasts basis. The Vinedo Chadwick especially, I think it's a very limited allocation. And lastly, if you have any feedback about our virtual classes, please feel free to email marketing@crystalwines.com. I think that's all. Thank you for participating. I think it was a very enriching session. You have very good questions from the participants. Thank you so much, Julian, for being with us
my
today.
pleasure.